Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Today is December 25th, Christmas Day of 2020, a year that we will all remember for all kinds of reasons. A year when maybe we would like to put it past us, but a year that we would perhaps like to end with peace and fellowship and love and all the feelings that this time of the year usually inspires. And I thought, what song, what piece of music could I present to audiences around the world that most evokes that feeling? And I decided, of course, a song that we all know, whatever language we speak. It's called Stille Nacht in German, Silent Night in English. It is one of the most famous and beloved songs of the holiday season, and it was composed and first performed on the same day, on December 24th of 1818, which means that it recently had its bicentennial. The original version in German, Stille Nacht, is a setting of a six-stanza poem written in German in 1816 by Joseph Mohr. He was a Catholic priest who in 1818 was the assistant pastor in the parish church of St. Nicholas in Oberndorf, Austria, near Salzburg. On Christmas Eve of 1818, Mohr showed the poem to his friend Franz Xaver Gruber, who was inspired to write and complete on that day the melody known round the world and sung in most every language. The organ in the Church of St. Nicholas was broken, so the two men performed Stille Nacht at evening mass as a song for two voices, with Mohr singing tenor and playing guitar accompaniment while Gruber sang bass. The chorus repeated the last two lines. Many people everywhere may have first encountered this song in German through a performance by the Vienna Boys Choir, which has a simple beauty to it, though I've become rather partial to the original guitar accompaniment. Both versions capture the essential element of the music and lyrics, namely our yearning for peace in a troubled world. I'm very happy to welcome today three wonderful Austrian women. Viewers may know that I have a particular love and passion for Austria. It borders Italy, where I've lived often in my life, and Austria was sort of my secret refuge to go when I went out of Italy. And I've explored most of the country. I love the people, I love the culture, I love the cake, let's not pretend. But I think that per capita, there's no country in the world that is more musically entrenched and lives music than does Austria. When I say music, I really mean the classical tradition. So let me present first Christiane Schober, a soprano, who will sing for us Silent Night, Stille Nacht, in the chapel where it was first sung in 1818. Yvonne Rosenstatter, who represents the state of Salzburg, called Salzburger Land. Just so you know, Salzburg is a city, but there's also Salzburg, the state. It's like New York City in New York State. And then in New York City is my dear friend Sigrid Pichler, who works at the Austrian Government Travel Office and is the most perfect representative of Austria. She and her colleagues, they do an outstanding job. So welcome to the three of you. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about this poem. Mohr, Joseph Mohr, wrote the poem in his previous parish, Mariapfarr, near Salzburg, as the seemingly endless wars in Europe from 1803 to 1815 that affected most of the continent, including Napoleonic France, Great Britain, Russia, and the Austrian Empire, were finally coming to an end. The largest and bloodiest conflict, called the Battle of Nations, took place just outside of outside of Leipzig in Saxony in October of 1813. And this was the first time that Napoleon was defeated by a coalition of allies after a decade of victories, and some 600,000 troops fought for 4 days, and estimates are that at least 75,000 people died. One of the persons who died was the father of Richard Wagner, who was born in Leipzig 5 months before the battle. His widowed mother moved with her children to Dresden, which is where Wagner grew up. Like most every European in the first half of the 19th century, Wagner had these wars as his legacy and as a burden. Afterwards, some empires, including Britain, Austria, and Russia, expanded while small duchies struggled to free themselves from imperial domination and unite to form the nations of Italy and Germany in the 1860s. So, Sigrid, if we could, I would like to read with you. You will read in your gorgeous German, I'll read in my pretty good English, the 6 verses of the song Silent Night, Stille Nacht. Bitte.
Wonderful. Thank you, Fred, for your kind introduction. Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht. Alles schläft, einsam wacht. Nur das traute, hochheilige Paar. Holder Knabe im lockigen Haar. Schlafe in himmlischer Ruhe. Schlafe in himmlischer Ruhe.
Silent night, holy night. All is calm, all is bright. Round yon virgin mother and child. Holy infant, so tender and mild. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace.
Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht. Gottes Sohn, o wie lacht. Lieb aus deinem göttlichen Mund, da uns schlägt die rettende Stund. Jesus in deiner Geburt, Jesus in deiner Geburt.
Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord at thy birth, Jesus, Lord at thy birth.
Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, die der Welt Heil gebracht, aus des Himmels goldenen Höhen, uns der Gnadenfülle lässt sehen. Jesum in Menschengestalt, Jesum in Menschengestalt.
Silent night, holy night, brought the world gracious light. Down from heaven's golden height comes to us the glorious sight, Jesus as one of mankind, Jesus as one of mankind.
Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, wo sich heut alle Macht väterlicher Liebe ergoss und als Bruder huldvoll umschloss. Jesus die Völker der Welt, Jesus die Völker der Welt.
Silent night, holy night, by his love, by his might, God our Father has graced as a brother gently embraced. Jesus, all nations on earth, Jesus, all nations on earth.
Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, lange schon uns bedacht, als der Herr vom Grimme befreit, in der Väter urgrauer Zeit aller Welt Schonung verhieß, aller Welt Schonung verhieß.
Silent night, holy night, long ago minding our plight, God the world from misery freed, in the dark age of our fathers decreed. All the world is redeemed, all the world is redeemed.
Stille Nacht, heilige Nacht, Hirten erst kundgemacht, durch der Engel Halleluja, tönt es laut bei fern und nah. Jesus der Retter ist da, Jesus der Retter ist da.
Silent night, holy night, shepherds first saw the sight of angels singing Alleluia, calling clearly near and far, Christ the Savior is born, Christ the Savior is born. Thank you, Sigrid.
Thank you, Fred.
What strikes me among many things in this song is the lyrics, is it's a reaction to what was happening in the world very directly. In 1818, fires destroyed much of a large part of Salzburg, adding further woe to a population that, like much of Europe, had suffered for years. Stille Nacht was created in that context. The song was immediately popular and became part of the Christmas services in Austria and other places where German was spoken. Soon families began to sing it at home. This tradition was especially strong in the Tyrol region of Western Austria. One family, the Rainer singers, toured and sang much like the von Trapp family in the 20th century, who you might know from The Sound of Music, and Stille Nacht was their most popular song. Sigrid and I will talk about the Rainer family in a moment. But now we have the really special treat and honor to have Christian Schober sing the song Stille Nacht in German in the chapel where it was first sung by those two men on December 24th, 1818. So, Christian, if you please. That was very beautiful. Thank you very much for that. A comment I want to make further about the song is that yes, it was born out of the Christian Catholic tradition specifically, and relates to the story of Jesus Christ and the birth of Jesus Christ. But its lyrics and its heart-touching simplicity really speak to everyone of every faith, every religion, every belief, every color, every gender expression. It is one of the most universal songs I can think of. And frankly, at least to me, not specific just to Catholics in Austria 200 years ago. And that's part of the genius of the song. Christian, what's it like to sing the song written in the place where it was first performed? It's kind of like tasting wine where grapes are grown.
Hi, Fred. Nice to see you. Yeah, it is a really special feeling to sing the song in this chapel where it first was performed. It's a lot of feelings when you sing that. So it comes Christmas Eve, the festivity comes up, and you remember two nice Christmas evenings. And also to sing the song that's the wonder of the song, because everybody sing it. You told them already all over the world, and I think that's the melody is so good to sing. It's easy. It's like a lullaby, and every time you sing Stille Nacht is different. So it's different from the place. You sing it in church. You sing it in front of the Christmas tree. You sing it alone, or you sing together with another or with a choir, and everybody loves this song. That's the special thing, and it goes to the heart, so it touches you, and that's the wonder of this song. And I like it. I love it to sing it every year.
Do you remember when you first learned it and the first time you sang it? Was it at home?
I can't really remember, but it was surely at home because my father sang very often with us children, and I think I was 3 or 4 years, and we sang it already in front of the Christmas tree. Yes.
Well, I know that you don't only sing on Christmas. Tell me about what you sing the rest of the year.
A lot. So I grew up with our folklore music, and I did yodeling and sing a lot of nice pieces. And after that, I studied in Salzburg the classical music, so I sing also classic music. So I do everything, and I did concerts, I sing in church, I sing everywhere. Yeah.
Could you, from your own experience, talk to me about what it's like to be an Austrian and grow up with classical music? Perhaps you don't know that people in the rest of the world don't all grow up with classical music, but there are certain very few countries in the world, such as Austria and Finland and not many more, where classical music and song and opera and symphony and chamber music are part of your food. It's as much as a Wiener Schnitzel and a strudel is a symphony in Austria. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, and I'm very proud to grow up in this country. It's a nice country and a musician country, and also that we have the classical music. So I'm very proud that Mozart is from Salzburg, and I think it's a present to grow up with this music and to have the experience to hear it from professional singers, and I'm very proud to perform. I can perform that also. So
thank you.
Feeling, yeah.
And now I'd like to talk to Yvonne, who your official job is that you work for and represent the Salzburger Land, which is the state of Salzburg. But you are also a native of Salzburg, and you too grew up with the song. Did you grow up singing the song, even though you're not a professional singer, or perhaps you are, and I don't know that?
No, but I think we all grew up with this song. It's our childhood. So the first images we have in front of our Christmas tree at the 24th of December is singing this Christmas carol and waiting to open our Christmas gifts. And everyone and the smell in the air from the tree and from the sweets. So it's something you never will forget in your life again.
Do you ever get tired of the song? Do you hear it too much?
No, I never will get tired, and it's even interesting. So we already at the moment we know it was translated in 130 languages, and it was the song is sung in 300 different kinds of dialects. So we have it in all over the world. It's so we are very proud that this song, that the first traces and the conductor and the songwriter lived in Salzburg or in Austria.
I understand there's a museum of Silent Night. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. There's a museum there you can find all the wonderful, all the interesting things you already mentioned today about the life from both men, the Christ, and how the story went over the world with the Rainer singers, and about the problems we had in the 1816 then he wrote this poem. There was a huge volcano, and they had nothing to eat because there was the ash cloud over Europe. And the whole story, it's such heartwarming, and it's amazing that this song found his way around the world in so many hearts.
In the museum, are there recordings of the 300 languages and dialects?
There are some recordings,
yeah.
Because there is, for example, a recording from Sri Lanka, which is a different kind of recording because it's quite a kind of choral song. Then, for example, last week, Zucchero performed it in a kind of Italian folk rock. And very interesting might even be that Jonas Kaufmann, the famous opera star, performed it as a puppet in our marionette or puppet theater, and it will be also shown on videos, and we will be able to view it on YouTube and see how this song in these different ways always comes as a peace song finally out.
On Idagio, there are many recordings of the song.
Yeah.
And I've attached to our broadcast today ones in several languages that I could find. It's interesting. We have, in fact, the first one is Jonas Kaufmann on guitar. So therefore, it sounds very close to the original. And then a particular favorite of mine is the Austrian mezzo-soprano Angelica Kirschlager.
Yeah.
And her version, to me, of all the versions I put up, I think is the closest to the ideal, and frankly, the way Christian sings it as well. It has that sincerity that connects to the lyrics. But I found one with three singers, Placido Domingo singing in German, Jose Carrera singing in Spanish, and Diana Ross singing in English, all together. I found it in Dutch. I found it in Swedish. It is a remarkable exercise to go around the world finding recordings of this. I've heard it in Hawaiian. I've heard it in Welsh, which is a very strange sounding sound. I've heard it just in everything. And I would love, as a long-term project, to see Salzburg's Museum of Silent Night gather recordings. Most of them are available on YouTube or in other forms. And it would be fascinating to sometime do a talk about how the music expresses the emotions, no matter what the words are, because the languages are so different. I've heard it in Swahili from Africa. It may be the most universal song. I'm sure there are others, but this certainly is among the most universal songs, which is why I think it's transcended its original meaning of celebrating Christmas and the birth of Jesus Christ during very difficult times, because when Christ was born, times were difficult. When this was written, times were difficult. Let's not pretend times are very difficult now. And this song helps bring us back to the better part of who we are as human beings, and it reminds us how to treat one another with love and kindness and a search for peace. Now I'm going to go to Sigrid in New York, who I've not seen for many months, even though we live in the same city, because you know very well the Austrian experience here in New York City and the role that the song plays. If I'm correct, the Reiner family, about whom we spoke, came to New York in 1839. And on Christmas Day, they stood in front of the statue, the memorial to Alexander Hamilton, of all people, in the graveyard of the Trinity Church in Lower Manhattan, and sang Stille Nacht for the first time in the Americas. And the song was adopted by German speakers in New York, of which there were many, many at the time. We had German language newspapers and whole neighborhoods where people only spoke German. The Metropolitan Opera, which was founded in 1883, had many years where they did all operas just in German. But in 1859, John Freeman Young, who was an assistant minister at the Trinity Church, translated 3 of the verses into English, including the very famous "Sleep in Heavenly Peace" that concludes the first verse. So, Sigrid, your office actually is not too far from Trinity Church. What's it like to be so close to a very historic place, not just for America, but also for an Austrian?
Well, for me, it was in the beginning, it also took some, educating and exactly where did this happen and where was the song first performed. And it is always kind of heartwarming that there is this connection between Trinity Church. Every time I go to work and I pass by this church, which we used to do pre-pandemic, that there is this like kind of that energetic feeling, because there's no plaque there, there's no sign there, but it is just in the air. And 2 years ago, when we had our big 200-year anniversary, which we also celebrated in New York, right at Trinity Church, it was really something special. And even now, it like makes me a little bit teary-eyed just to think of that moment when we had Christiane there and some other singers from Austria, from Tyrol, the Kroll family singers, and we were all in the court, not only the courtyard, it was actually a cemetery where the tomb of Hamilton is, where the song was first performed, and we were singing it again. And the hustle and bustle of a New York Christmas during a, shall we say, normal year is incredible. You hear cars honking, you hear cars going by, you hear bells ringing, you hear people, screaming, shouting, talking. But when we sang, all of this noise was still there, but still by the sheer power of the song, I felt like all of that didn't matter. And, it lifted us all up in a certain sense. So that was definitely one of the most powerful moments in regards to Silent Night that I've ever experienced in New York. What I do have to say, what was funny particular in that year, because for us Austrians, and I think, well, granted that we work in tourism, and Christiane in particular, who sings this song probably a lot during Christmas time, but for us, this song is reserved for December 24th. This song is not sung like from, mid of November until December 24th. So, and working on this event and on the celebration of the 200-year anniversary, I started listening to Silent Night in July. And it was kind of gut-wrenching. I'm like, I can't do this right now. I can't do this right now. This is against, all the Austrian laws that you can possibly imagine. But I mean, clearly I wasn't punished for it by any higher power, but it was interesting. So, and this is one of the not peculiarities, but something that as an Austrian in New York, I had to get used to. And whereas Stille Nacht before the 24th is still a little bit of and is off-putting for me, what I do embrace is that, here we start decorating our Christmas trees after Thanksgiving, early, like the last weekend in November or early in December, like even the trees in our homes, which we don't do either in Austria. It's much later, closer to the 24th. But I do appreciate that tradition of having the tree, decorated and all lit up throughout the entire month of December. So that I really, truly enjoy.
What listeners not from New York may not know is that Trinity Church is very close and dear to all Americans, but especially New Yorkers. whether or not you're a Christian, it doesn't matter. It's dear to all of us because, number one, that is where George Washington worshiped. His Bible is in that church, because many people don't know that the first capital of the United States was New York, and the government offices were down the street from this church. So Washington was there. We know that, and Alexander Hamilton and many other people. But in more recent times, the church took on an additional and very powerful meaning, because one block away was the World Trade Center. And when everything came tumbling down and thousands of people died on September 11th of 2001, among the things that all of us thought about was the Trinity Church must have been destroyed. And while many things right there were destroyed, miraculously, the church was not destroyed. And it became a place where people prayed and found refuge when the relief workers were going in for many months. People don't know that the attack was on September 11th. The fires on the site did not go out until December 16th of 2001. That's 3 months of fires. And we have a tradition in New York that Handel's Messiah has always been played in that church since it was composed in and presented in Ireland. A year or two later, in the 1700s, the 18th century, we began to do it in New York, and people were talking about whether, whether we could do it this year, that year, 2001. And my radio station, WQXR, our classical music radio station here, every year would broadcast the performance live. And what was amazing was it was very cold. The ash was in the air, just like the ash from the volcano that covered most of Europe in 1816. It was a very similar experience. The organ pipes were filled with ash, just the way in Austria, the organ in the St. Nicholas Church was not working, and therefore that's why the piece Silent Night was played on the guitar. And what happened was, we did the performance of the Messiah. Everybody wore scarves. Some of them would have worn masks. These singers stood up and sang. Everything had deeper significance. And the organ, we tried to play it, and it sort of whistled and rasped. It didn't really sound like the traditional organ. But it was one of the most moving experiences that one could have, because New Yorkers were saying to the world that we are here, we will continue our traditions. And Handel's Messiah, which was written for Easter, actually, not for Christmas, and Silent Night are two examples of music that have transcended their original intention. I'm sure that Gruber and Moore could not have imagined that the entire world in 300 languages would be singing their song that they composed in the moment in Austria. The connection of Silent Night with issues of war and peace have always been attached to the song, most famously during the First World War, which was another battle of nations that lasted for 4 years and in many ways mirrored exactly what happened a century before. Millions of people died in World War I, not only from battle, but from disease and from famine. In Flanders on Christmas Eve of 1914, German, French, and Scottish troops laid down their weapons, removed their helmets, and had a brief respite from the war. These events were depicted in a 2005 film, Joyeux Noël, whose characters included 2 opera singers with their singing voices dubbed by Natalie Dessay and Rolando Villazon. And most famously, these events became a splendid contemporary opera which won the Pulitzer Prize, called Silent Night, by the composer Kevin Putz and by Mark Campbell, the librettist, who I had as a guest a few weeks ago. And let me go back to Austria now, to Yvonne and to Christian. As you both know, I adore Salzburg, really genuinely adore it. I have attended many Salzburg festivals, not only the summer festival, but the winter one, the Mozart Week in January, and the Easter festival. I've never been to the June festival, which I cannot pronounce. How do you pronounce it?
Think Festival.
Okay. I've not been to that one yet, but I've been fortunate to work at the Summer Salzburg Festival a few times. And in 2006, Mozart's 250th anniversary, I worked at the Winter Festival. And winter in Salzburg, to me, there's a lot of snow, but it's one of my favorite places in the world because this normally very busy, full city becomes incredibly quiet. And the fact that a city, which it's not a huge city, but it's certainly a city with a large population and streetcars and automobiles and restaurants and theaters and so on, becomes remarkably quiet. And one thing among many that I adore in Salzburg is the public transportation is the quietest public transportation I know in the world. The streetcars are very quiet. People don't shout into their mobile phones. They don't use them. There's a wonderful peace and silence in Salzburg that I find hard to explain to people. Did both of you grow up with that silence? And then when you went to Vienna, to Milan, to Munich, to New York, perhaps, and you heard all of this noise, did that seem strange to you?
It's different. So if you grew up in a cultural and traditional city, it's very different because it's everything very grounded and not noisy, and everything is more moderate. I think even the life seems to be more moderate because we have no underground. So, and everything, it's not so stressed. So it's a bit more of coming down, going back to the roots. But I think, yes, it's even in summer or in winter, as you mentioned. So it gives you such a lot of energy. I sometimes thought probably the Celtic, they already knew where to settle, or the Romans, because of the energy. And I think Salzburg gives a lot of this coming down, and even you are between mountains, you have the river Salzach. So it's an alpine city, as you mentioned, a small cute town, but it's world open. But for me, yes, it's true. It's the most lovely place to live. And I've been in New York, I've been in Bangkok, but for me, coming back is always coming home and to be grounded.
Christiane, how do you feel about the sound of Salzburg?
If I hear the sound of Salzburg, yeah, it's the same as Yvonne said. It's special in Salzburg. It is a town, and there is living, and but not so noisy. And then you hear some places, you hear some musicians, and there's a Mozarteum. You hear the singers, probations, and so you hear classical music, and yes, there is life in the town, but not so loud as in other towns. And I have to say, I didn't grow up in the town. I grew up in the mountains, so 70 kilometers southern, and it's very quiet there. But I'm always happy to come to Salzburg. It's a town, but not this huge city. So it's good.
In fact, I think Salzburg is the only major city I know in the world where I can hear the river. I can hear the Salzach River rushing through the town, even though 1 block away from the river is the busiest shopping street in the city. And there are a lot of people there, but you can hear the river. And there are many parts of Salzburg when I walk around, I can hear footsteps. I can hear the spoon in a cup of delicious Austrian coffee. I hear things. The only other place I know in the world like that is Venice. And Venice has no automobiles, and it's a different acoustic, but a city that has streetcars and so on, it's really the only one. Salzburg also has incredible churches. I'm not here to promote Salzburg. Salzburg promotes itself. But there even if Mozart didn't come from Salzburg, and he did, and we can talk about Mozart all we want, and we love Mozart, but there's a lot more to Salzburg than Mozart. And he left in July of 1781 and went to Vienna, but what he left behind continued to grow. It was not always a Habsburg city. It had its own traditions. It had the Archbishop Colloredo, and it had connections to Rome. And Yvonne mentioned about Rome. I guess it's important to say that Salzburg was created and built by the Romans. It's a Roman city. And the reason for that is that the Romans traveled all over the continental Europe and North Africa looking for places that had salt, because salt was more valuable than money. And salt in English and in Italian became salario, salary. You were paid in salt. You use salt to make salsiccia, sausage, to preserve meat. You preserve green vegetables in salad. Insalata was salt. There are endless ways that salt had an application for the Romans. But what was different in what became Salzburg, is that most places were by the sea. And you could take salt from Sicily, from Iberia, from Sardinia. But in this case, there were salt mines. So the Romans found a means of extracting salt from the salt mines. So it's a city of salt. And I find very interesting in Salzburg particularly that it is a trilingual city. It is not just German and English. It's German, English, and Italian. And I speak fluent Italian. My German is okay, but I speak fluent Italian. And in Salzburg, I find myself speaking Italian to people all the time, and it has a very Italian feeling to it. So that plus delicious food. And it was the birthplace of Herbert von Karajan, and his house is there. I think what is so impressive to me about Salzburg is that everything is deeply felt. The Salzburg people are not casual people. They deeply feel their traditions, their history, their love of their place, their awareness of the impact of their creativity, and not just Mozart and not just the Trapp family, but every aspect of Salzburg. And it's a city that has devoted itself to peace. There are peace symposiums in Salzburg. It's a place where international leaders have met. The Salzburg Festival, which I was supposed to work at in this pandemic year in 2020, was founded in 1920, and this was going to be the centennial. And there was a reduced version of the festival, and they amazingly got it on. And they did streaming, and they did 2 operas, Elektra by Richard Strauss and Così fan tutte by Mozart, because Strauss, along with Hugo von Hofmannsthal, Max Reinhardt, and others, created the festival in after World War I, in 1920, as a response to World War I, because after the disaster of war and separation and everything that we were talking about in Stille Nacht and Silent Night in 1818, that we wanted to make a better world. In 1918, the Salzburg Festival was created as an artistic response to the disaster of war. And now in 2020, we have, with the arts, and not only to respond to a different kind of disaster. And so Salzburg and its meaning and this song remain continuously relevant. And I just think that 200 years on, before I conclude, I think I want to talk to you more about Salzburg. Yvonne, tell me about the Salzburg that I don't know. And I don't just mean the city, but the Salzburger land. And I know it very well. But it's beautiful lakes, beautiful mountains, organic farming. That's another thing. In Europe, Italy has the most organic farming per capita, but Austria is a close second. And there are so many farms in Salzburger land that I've gone to where the cows are milked, and then suddenly you have fresh milk and cheeses and butter and so on. And beautiful breads, and I'm not even going to the cake and the pastry, which I love. But it's very, well, I'm not going to describe it. Yvonne, you describe it. What is the Salzburg Land that I don't know that you would want me to go to?
Wow, it's a good question. So for me, for example, the lake and mountains district in the Salzkammergut, it's such an amazing area because you have, even in summer and winter, you have lakes. You can go up hiking, biking, cycling, and you can relax. You can feel you have this clean air, and even the lakes you have drinking water quality. And there are such a lot of secrets, hidden secrets. Even if you're going, for example, to Gosal, that you find the huts. It's a huts path. We have the most huts in the Salzburger Land. You find these crystal clear mountain lakes in the summer. And I think, as you already mentioned, we have already in Salzburg 50% ecological farming. So, and with a very high percentage, and even our tourism board is looking to promote by the hoteliers and restaurants to make more and more to work that their percentage of ecological food is going up. So I think if you would go to Salzburg, I would recommend some funny thing, going to the salt mines. I don't know if you have ever been there, because inside the salt mines, in no COVID times, there are also concerts in the salt mines.
I've not done that. No.
Yeah, and dinner invitations. So these are experiences you will, I think, you won't find anywhere in the world. And we have this big ice cave, for example, Eisriesenwelt. It's amazing. If it's outside, you have 30 degrees, you go in this ice cave and you're in another world. It's like kind of ice world in the middle, in the heart of Europe. And everything is really amazing. Or going on the Roman streets, for example, you can go in some areas, you can still find amethyst and smaragds and rubins, going there and knocking them out of the stone. So it's such a big variety beside culture, beside our traditions, beside our Alpine cuisine. So it's, I think, for everyone, you maybe find the perfect place to stay and to be in Salzburg.
Another question that you are the right person to ask. Correct my pronunciation if I'm wrong. Trachten. In other words.
Yeah, for example, you see today I have something, it's Trachten, and it's very traditional. For example, that dress I have today is from my grandma. She did it on her own with her hands, and she made it in the 1950s. Mm-hmm. So I think we are all very proud about our Trachten, because it's a kind of our culture, even to show our culture. And in Salzburg, for example, they have this so-called Trachten Thursday. So on Thursday in the Salzburg city, everyone likes to go out with his lederhosen and dirndls, and we are proud to show to everyone a bit of our culture, a bit of our history, because in former times the dresses meant something special, the colors, how you did the scarves, right or left, if you're married, not married. So there are stories behind our Trachten, and it's...
I'll tell you what I do on Thursdays in Salzburg, Thursday mornings.
Oh, you go.
There is the outdoor market.
Yeah.
And if vegetarians are listening, I apologize, but there is a chicken farmer, I don't recall his name, who every Wednesday night, certain chickens meet their end. And on Thursday morning, he makes the most divine Backhändel roasted chicken I've had anywhere in the world. And it's across the street from my favorite store in Salzburg, and I don't remember the name, so I'm not doing advertising, but it's a store that sells Trachten. And one day I've promised myself, I was going to do it this year when I was supposed to be in Salzburg. I want to buy a traditional Loden coat, but not in the green or the blue that's traditional, but they have a color only there called anthracite, which is sort of a silver, gray, black. It's the most beautiful coat. And the last time I went there 2 years ago, I wanted to buy one that they didn't have it in my size. So I went on a diet and I've lost 25 kilos. So now I can wear the coat. And my memories of Salzburg go back to 1975 and 76 when I was a teenager and I first worked there. And it's a city that lives with me all the time. I'm very aware of it. And this is not to say that I don't love other Austrian cities, because frankly, I've loved every Austrian city I've gone to, and my Viennese friends think I'm Viennese, so that's okay too. But it's Salzburg, a city that gets inside you and fills you with memories. And I think that the music is part of the memory for me. It has to be connected. While you were talking, had a memory, I can tell you the night. January 27th, 2006, that was Mozart's 250th birthday. And he was born at 8:02 in the evening. And there was an international broadcast. And we had presenters in different languages, and I was the English language presenter. And before going to do the broadcast, I went to, I believe it's called St. Peter's Keller. It's a very old restaurant opposite the dome, the cathedral where Mozart was baptized. And at 8:02, they rang all the bells to celebrate the exact moment. And my microphone, I was holding it outside. And in America, all over America, people heard the bells for the moment that it was happening in Salzburg. And it was a very cold night, of course. And in the square right near there, thousands of Salzburg people lined up to get a piece of Mozart birthday cake. So it's a city that lives in memory, but it lives in the present. And I'm just reminded of something that Helga Rabel-Stadler, the president of the Salzburg Festival, said to me, and she's right, that Salzburg is the heart of Europe. And it's a heart that I feel beating all the time. Let me go back to my heart in New York, Sigrid Pichler. What's it like? You're not from Salzburg. What's it like to be an Austrian at Christmas time in New York, beyond the stores and beyond the fact that we set up our trees in November and so on? But what do you take from your Austrian side and feel in New York?
I think the whole experience of Christmas still, I mean, no matter where I hear Silent Night or any other more traditional Christmas carol, I think it takes me back to, like also like Christiane said, to like memories with your family and your parents when you were little and where you sang that song. And, it's just, even if it's just in your mind, it is always there kind of. And it's especially with Christmas, I think for all of us who, from the Catholic Christian tradition, it is something very connected to childhood and those fond memories of being together with family and siblings and the food and the Christmas cookies, the baking. This is something, also that in New York, I mean, fortunately, it's like the Christmas cookie baking is also something that we do here, and that is traditional, part of the tradition. So, but bottom line is, no matter where I am, and if it's more like of an, shall we say, American style Christmas party, it is still, when certain songs come on or where certain, gifts are presented, it takes you back to how you experienced it at home and how I experienced it in Austria growing up. And to a certain extent, I think this is the particular charm of Christmas, and the particular charm and the particular meaning and energy of a song like Silent Night, where no matter where you are, it brings you back to your childhood, to like good memories you have with that. And it's kind of like, and to go full circle with what Yvonne said before, like this like grounding. Okay, this is home. This is where my roots are, no matter where you are in the world.
So to conclude, number one, I would like to thank these three wonderful guests I had. And Christiane, again, thank you for singing so beautifully.
Yeah.
I never announced who my next guest will be, but I'm so excited that we're concluding this year, 2020, with Silent Night and all of what that means. But on January 1st of 2021, my guest will be the magnificent artist, really one of the greatest of our century and of the previous century, Friederike von Stade. And so please all tune in for that. And in conclusion, I would like to say that 200 years after this song was written, we're still in a turbulent world that resists learning from the brutal examples of past conflict and disaster. Hatred and prejudice still often find ways of trumping kindness and love. So may this song be an example of ways to transcend ideology, religion, and language to find that which all humanity shares and should treasure. May we not only have heavenly peace, but peace on earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
Bye.